Hi, and welcome to my sci-fi, fantasy, and horror short fiction roundup for August 2021. And this month, I'm also prepping my quarterly roundup, my short fiction treasures roundup for Strange Horizons, so you can keep an eye out for that at Strange Horizons later this month. But let's start off with my picks for my favorite stories that I read in August 2021. And I'm starting off with A Hollow in the Sky by Alexander Glass from Interzone, and it's a double issue, number 291. And this story is part of an excellent double issue of Interzone. Glass's sci-fi tale has wasps, a futuristic monastery, memories, regrets, and space aliens. It feels like a really fresh take on alien encounter sci-fi. And I also love how the story has a really satisfying payoff where a very small choice in the beginning ends up having a major impact on the ending. I'm a big fan of sci-fi stories with a focus on characters and people and relationships, like this one. And by the way, like I said, this is from a great double issue. It's well worth springing for the whole issue, not least because it's full of gorgeous artwork in addition to great fiction. My next pick is Immortal Coil by Ellen Kushner in Uncanny Magazine. And I'm just in love with this gorgeously crafted piece by Kushner. The prose is enchanting, and the story is vivid and imaginative as we find ourselves delving deep into the lives and deaths, of Kit Marlowe and Will Shakespeare. Will is in his 40s in the story, and Kit, well, he's been dead for years, or so Will thought at least, until the ghost of his friend appears, looking no older or worse for wear than the day he died all those years ago. Is it really a ghost, though? Marlowe leads Shakespeare on a merry chase of sorts through the bookstalls before they meet each other in earnest. And what he has to tell Will is that there is a choice, a bargain to be made. Just read this story. It really reminded me, more in the mood of it, of another favorite story of mine from Shimmer, which is called Rapture, and it's by Meg Ellison. My next story pick is also from Uncanny Magazine. It's The Wishing Pool by Tanariv Due. I'm a sucker for stories of how wishes can get turned around and twisted. And in Due's story, there is indeed a twist or two in how the wishing pool makes wishes come true. We follow Joy, who has come to check up on her ailing dad. He's not doing so well after Joy's mom passed away, and living alone in a rundown cottage in the woods might not be great for him. Now, the cottage and the surrounding woods hold many childhood memories for Joy, memories both good and not so great. And the wishing pool beneath the oaks is one of the strongest memories she has. And I love the eerie undertow of the story from the get-go, and I love the payoff at the end, as we're left wondering what it might cost you to see a wish come true. My next story pick is Candide, Life by Beth Goder in Clark's World. Now, Goder's story deals with profound themes like art, creativity, relationships. It's a quiet story told in a deliberate and carefully crafted way. And there is so much going on beneath the surface of the prose. The way Goder lays bare the manipulative, dismissive cruelty some people employ to retain the power in a relationship or to steal another's thunder is brilliant. And the way this story talks about how art is crafted, how we find inspiration, and what the value is of the art we create is both inspirational and powerful. And my next story pick is Follow by T.R. Siebert in Future Science Fiction Digest. This science fiction story is haunting and wields so much emotional power as it describes Anna's quest to find Nida, the woman who was, once upon a time, her closest friend. Nida was also the scientist who designed the amazing nanobots that are keeping Anna alive as she travels through space, tracking Nida on planet after planet through communities that were once full of life, but are now empty and abandoned. Siebert weaves together so much science and so much heart in the story as we realize the urgency of Anna's quest and just how wrenching and conflicted Anna is about Nida. It's a beautiful story, beautifully told. My next story pick is Where Things Fall from the Sky by Ali Wilkes in Nightmare. And it's set in Spitsbergen. It starts off in Spitsbergen in 1881 on a whaling station, where David Grace, born and raised in the Welsh Valleys, is going off on an expedition. It's a bone-chilling, downright haunting tale of what happens when a ship on an Arctic expedition hauls up something from the bottom of the sea. Is it a meteorite? That's what it seems to be. We do know that it fell from the skies a very long time ago and ended up at the bottom of the ocean. Now, no matter what the object actually is, once it's aboard the ship, things start going wrong, and people start dying and disappearing and changing. Wilkes fills this tale with a crew of flesh and blood characters that just pop off the page and make the dread and the deaths even more harrowing. A powerful and unforgettable tale. My next story pick is The Screaming Tree by Clara Madrigano in the Dark. In the story, a brother and sister head back to their family's old hometown, to rectify a strange situation with the plaque for their grandmother at the family mausoleum. For some reason, the plaque they had placed there after she passed away has disappeared. But what they find is not so much a mystery as a profound and ancient horror. Madrigano expertly builds an unsettling atmosphere and a sense of inescapable terror. And what a finale. It's an outstanding read. My next story pick is The 11th Hour by Karim Katan in Translunar Traveler's Lounge. And I'll quote this story first. What I have come to realize is that I am not entirely what I think I am, or rather, I am simultaneously here and elsewhere. End quote. This is an utterly strange and utterly beautiful story about a person who has come to realize that, like they say, they are not what they seem to be. And they have gained this insight during a mysterious epiphany during the 11th hour of the day, the hour of the lull, a properly impossible island of an hour. Catan threads filaments of world building, of repressive history, of memory, of submerged identity into the fabric of this quietly shifting tale. And I love how vivid both the narrator and their world become as the reality of what has happened and what is happening becomes clear. A truly surreal beauty of a story. My next story pick is My Sister is a Scorpion by Isabel Cañas in Lightspeed. And I'll quote this story too. My baby sister didn't used to be a scorpion, but she is one now. I don't know if that sounds weird to you, but it doesn't to me, because right after my sister was born, Abuelita turned into a white crane and flew away. There's a great child's logic running through this story in the way that the older sister sees things happening in the world that her parents and other adults do not see. Whether she sees true or whether she's imagining things, well, That's for the reader to decide. Kanyas captures the voice of the child perfectly in her prose and also captures the stubborn conviction of a child that will not accept the grown-up's version of reality, even in the face of death. My next story pick is What We Leave Behind Us by Rob Costello in The Wondrous Real magazine. This is a ghost story about returning to the place where we grew up and finding the echoes, the lingering memories of childhood and adolescence coming back to haunt us. Beyond the emotional power of this piece, I'm also fascinated by the visceral details included about cleaning muscles, about cooking, about food and remembrance. There's so much regret and grief here mingling with the ghost and her visitor. My next story pick is Birding with My Human by Sylvia Heike in Nature. This is a quiet and beautifully crafted piece about Willa, a young woman, and her robot. They go bird watching in the same place as Willa went bird watching with her grandpa when he was still alive. Watching the birds, counting the birds, identifying the birds is easy enough for the robot. But on this day, the robot feels as if they've somehow upset, maybe even disappointed Willa. It's a lovely flash story with a contemplative vibe that I really love. My next story pick is For Rain is Too Wet and Fire to Burn by Robert Minto and Beneath Ceaseless Skies. This story is set in a uniquely imagined world with angels that differ from the divine, powerful beings we might expect. And Minto's story is a nuanced and finely crafted tale about grief and loss and about what we can do, if anything, to make it through the pain when we lose someone. I love the mysterious vibe of the angels here and how Minto captures the isolation and intense emotions of a parent that has lost their child. While the narrator's wife finds solace in her faith and community, he is only further enraged by any attempts to find meaning in his child's death. Gorgeously wrought story. Next up is Morning by Diane Russell in Faya number 19. And I'm going to quote this story. An echo is a time traveler fucking with the past, and a clone is an echo of a person, a mindfuck to everyone who'd known the original. That's what I thought when they brought my sister back from the dead, and I had to look at that face, blank and new and familiar, aged to the point where she had died, yet free from the scars of our childhood. End quote. So in the story, two sisters, or rather a sister and a clone, face a challenging quest on the surface of a distant exoplanet. Both of them are disposable to the powers that be, and the surviving sister finds it exceedingly difficult to deal with the genetic copy of her sister, even when they have to rely on each other in this harsh new world. I love this story for its fierce voice and the way it captures a complex and complicated sibling relationship, while also giving the reader an acute sense of what the world these sisters inhabit is like. Next up is I Wear My Spiders in Remembrance of Myself by Kel Coleman in Apparition Lit. Now, this is an amazing story. It uses the appearance of spiders as a physical representation of the hurt and trauma, minor and major, that the characters encounter throughout their lives. Coleman uses this imagery and the idea of spiders that appear and will not go away once they've found you so skillfully and with such a poetic precision that it becomes unsettling, devastating, and heartrending. In the end, Coleman also uses this imagery to tell a story about finding solace, finding love, and finding a way to live with the spiders in your life. Next up is The Failing Name by Eugen Bacon and Seb Dubinsky in Fantasy Magazine. Now, this might be a short story, but it has the intricately layered feel of an epic as we follow a black girl called Jolene and her fate after she throws a mango to save a young boy from being assaulted. After this, she travels to Paris, works very hard, and is not treated well by any of the people she meets or any of the people she has to rely on. But there is magic and there is power in her even so. This is an unsettling, disturbing story, beautifully written. My next story pick is 100 Seconds to Midnight by Lauren Ring in Escape Pod. Now, this is a Caillou story like no other Caillou story I've ever read. It's a quietly devastating read. Here, the Caillou invasion and the horror and death it's causing play out almost in the background as the narrator waits for her plane at the airport. Much like the catastrophes we've seen play out in our own lifetime. The devastation doesn't end the world outright immediately. Rather, the terror of what's happening seeps into everyday life and becomes a part of the news cycle. And occasionally, as this horror stalks the world, the real terror of what's happening comes close enough to rip away whatever defenses we've built up. And when this Caillou comes a-calling, well, all I can say is the scenes at the airport are wrenching. Excellent science fiction story by Ring. My final story pick this month is To the Honorable and Esteemed Monsters Under My Bed by E.A. Bourland in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And it's the September-October issue for 2021. It's hard to really describe how delightful and funny and very sinister this epistolary story is. It's written as a series of letters from a child to the monsters under his bed. And they reveal the many terrible things that are happening and have happened to him. As it turns out, those monsters under the bed are the least of his worries and may even end up helping him out. There's such an imaginative joy in the language and voice of the story, and I absolutely adore the juxtaposition of the dark subject matter revealed in the letters and the almost whimsical style of those letters. Brilliantly done. And that's all I've got for this month. Thanks so much for listening, and like I said, keep an eye out for my quarterly roundup in Strange Horizons later in September, and I'll be back next month with another roundup. Thanks so much for listening.